There's never an easy way to see your loved ones go. We can only hope that their passing is peaceful and painless. Heartbreakingly, this isn't always the case. In this video, we're going to talk about the most horrible ways people have died. The list gets worse as we go, so make sure you stick around until the end. Viewer discretion is advised. Michael Malloy was just another down-on-his-luck man who was struggling to find work in New York City during the Great Depression. Malloy often spent his time in local bars, and with most bars, even today, the chance of running into some rather unsavory characters is pretty high. Malloy would spend his time at one speakeasy in particular. This bar was owned by a man named Tony Marino. He was lucky to ever get paid for his bootlegged whiskey, and Malloy would often drink himself unconscious in Tony's bar. July rolled around in 1932, and Malloy, as usual, was actively drinking inside Tony's bar. This is when Tony and two of his friends, Frank Pasqua and Daniel Kreisberg, formulated a plan to make some money. They decided to take out a life insurance policy on Malloy, and with their help, he would drink himself to death, leaving them with the insurance money. Malloy wasn't somebody who had friends or family that were active in his life. At the time, nobody even knew the man's age. In Tony's eyes, this made him a great candidate for this plan, because he wouldn't be missed or even asked about, and they could easily forge his identity. Additionally, Tony had experience doing this type of scam. About a year earlier, he had done the same thing to a homeless woman, collecting $2,000 from her life insurance policy. The crew Tony had gathered included some friends, the bartender, Red Murphy, and a few other criminals named John McNally, Edward Smith, Tony Bastone, and Joseph Maglione. Red Murphy's job was to identify Malloy and pretend to be his next of kin. Malloy would play the role of Nicholas Mellery, an identity made up just for the occasion. Upon completion of this plan, each member of the crew would get a cut of $3,576, which is equal to about $65,000 today. Tony had gotten Malloy to sign the 3 insurance policies by simply offering him a limitless bar tab in exchange. At the time, Malloy seemed pretty happy about the agreement. Considering he was already a drunk and didn't take great care of himself, Malloy was already in pretty bad shape. Because of this, Tony was hopeful that Malloy would just drink himself to death with his endless supply of booze. After 3 days, however, Malloy was still coming back for more. In an attempt to speed up the process, Tony began to spike the drinks he was serving Malloy. Some sources list a variety of different liquids that were served to Malloy in his drinks. The list includes antifreeze, turpentine, and even rat poison. At one point, he was even believed to drink straight wood alcohol, which is methanol crudely distilled from wood. Just a small amount of wood alcohol can cause blindness due to its potency. Tony would wait until Malloy was drunk on whiskey and switch him over to wood alcohol. Malloy didn't even notice a difference. He happily continued to drink the poison and would keep coming back night after night. At one point, Malloy even passed out and fell to the floor, but he didn't die. He slept, and he woke up a few hours later and immediately asked for another drink. Growing increasingly impatient, the crew then decided to not only poison the drinks being served to Malloy, but his food as well. They soaked oysters in denatured alcohol for a few days and fed them to Malloy between shots of wood alcohol. Unfortunately for them, this still seemed to have no effect on Malloy. At this point, Tony was growing annoyed. He went on to feed Malloy a sandwich that contained rotten sardines, broken glass, carpet tacks, and even shavings from the sardine can. This wouldn't work either. The crew was wasting more and more money trying to kill Malloy, which meant that in the end, the payout was dropping with each failed attempt. The crew was getting desperate. With it being the middle of winter, their next idea was much more straightforward. When Malloy inevitably passed out the next night, they took him to Crotona Park, which was about a half-mile away from the bar, and covered in snow at the time. They ripped his clothes open, poured 5 gallons of water on him, and left Malloy on a park bench. Tony was shocked to find Malloy right back at the bar the next day. The torture that Malloy was enduring brought to him by the people that he trusted was nothing short of brutal. But it wasn't over yet. The crew decided that they needed to get this done once and for all. They added a new member to the crew, a cab driver named Hershey Green. He was ordered to run over Malloy with his vehicle. In the middle of the night, they brought Malloy out to the street and attempted to have him run over by the cab driver. On the third attempt, they finally hit him, and Malloy was left for dead in the street. A week later, just as they'd planned, Red Murphy pretended to be Nicholas Mellery's brother and would proceed to call morgues and hospitals all over the area in hopes of hearing about Malloy's death. A few days passed, and Malloy showed up for a drink with a fractured skull bone and broken shoulder. February's insurance premium was due, so with limited time to make the payment for that month, the crew considered their options. They decided a hitman would be too expensive considering all the money that they had already spent on the last 5 attempts, and they knew they needed to try something that Malloy had no chance of surviving. In a tenement room, the crew fastened one end of a rubber tube from a gas light into Malloy's mouth with a towel that they tightly wrapped around his face. They would poison Malloy one last time with carbon monoxide. After all of their hard work, they only received an $800 payment, and it would only fall apart when they attempted to collect the insurance money. In order for the insurance company to legitimize the claim, they needed to see the body. Pasqua told them that it was buried already, causing the insurance company to call the authorities. Upon inspection of Malloy's body, they determined that his death was not caused by labor pneumonia as stated in the phony death certificate. Green was unhappy with his cut of the claim. He also started talking to the police about their plan. There was now enough evidence to put the rest of the crew behind bars, and they all appeared at the Bronx County Courthouse. They went on to plead insanity, and when that didn't work, they all tried to blame Bastone for the murder. But the courtroom wasn't buying it. Pasqua, Marino, Kreisberg, and Murphy were all sentenced to death by the electric chair in Sing Sing prison, referred to as Old Sparky. Green was the only member of the crew that was able to escape execution, but he was still sent to prison. Malloy wasn't ever big on achievement in his life, but the horrifying things that he endured gave him quite a bit of fame after his death. Michael Malloy would go down in history as one of the most stubborn murder victims ever known. In November of 1983, 4 divers descended below the North Sea in Norway. Their names were Edwin Coward and Roy Lucas, who were located in Chamber 1 of the compressed living quarters, and Bjorn Bergersen and Truls Hellevik, who were located in Chamber 2 via a trunk connected to the diving bell. The trunk secured the bell to Chamber 2 with the use of clamps which were being operated by diving tenders named William Crammond and Martin Saunders. It's extremely important that the pressure within the chambers, trunk, and diving bell must be kept in perfect balance at all times. This allows the diving bell to be connected and disconnected safely. Losing control of the balance can result in deadly circumstances, as the crew was about to find out. The dive tenders were required to follow a specific protocol in order to maintain the balance. First, the door to the diving bell needs to be securely closed. Then the pressure is increased in the diving bell in order to further seal the doors. After that, they need to close off Chamber 1 from the trunk. And then, the trunk connected to the diving bell and chambers must be depressurized to a pressure of 1 atmosphere. Finally, the clamp can be released, and the diving bell can be set free from the chambers. Everyone on the team was highly experienced, but even so, something went horribly wrong. Theories point to Crammond. The theory is that he had accidentally released the diving bell before the pressure could be increased, and before sealing off Chamber 1 from the trunk. Because of this fatal mistake, the pressure of the trunk, living chambers, and ocean itself ended up at extremely different pressures. This caused something known as explosive decompression. The pressure gradient that the divers were exposed to was far too extreme for the human body to withstand. The deaths of these 4 divers was immediate and violent. The explosive decompression caused the air to rush out of the trunk, forcing the diving bell from its position. The diving bell struck the tenders, killing Crammond and leaving Saunders severely injured. As for the divers, they were killed almost instantly. However, according to forensic reports, their deaths would be far from painless. The intense pressure differences had caused 3 of the 4 divers' blood to flash boil. They were instantly cooked from the inside. The 4th diver was forced out of an open doorway measuring only 24 inches long, leaving him severely mutilated. Various body parts belonging to the diver were severed, and vital organs were launched as far as 30 feet away. Preliminary investigators said that his organs were ejected from his body without any harm to them whatsoever. They said it was as if the organs were dissected from the diver's body. It's easy to blame human error for any disaster, but an accident this gruesome required answers beyond speculation. A group formed, named the North Sea Divers Alliance, and filed a lawsuit against Dolphin Energy. In 2008, after 26 years, they had finally obtained the answers they had been lobbying for. The report said that the cause of the accident was not human error at all, but faulty equipment was to blame for the horrifying incident. The Byford Dolphin was using state-of-the-art drilling equipment at the time of its completion. All of the components were able to pass very strict regulations set by the Norwegian government, but as time went on, the equipment slowly became obsolete. This means that by the time 1983 came around, most of the equipment on board was either considered obsolete at the time or had been banned completely from Norwegian waters, as they were no longer able to adhere to updated regulations. With this newly obtained information, William Crammond was completely absolved of any responsibility for the incident, and in 2016, the Byford Dolphin was finally put to rest. This accident serves as a terrifying reminder that despite having more knowledge than ever, we still only know a very small amount when it comes to the dangers of decompression and saturation diving. Thank you for making it to the end of the video, and if you like these types of videos, along with any other true yet horrifying topics, be sure to give the video a like and follow me. And at this point, I'd also like to add that if there are any stories you'd like me to cover, my email is in the description, so feel free to share them with me and they may end up in a future video. This is FearBank, and I'll see you next time.